there, it's Grandma Missy again. We are on the 4th chapter of Max Lucado's book, Tell Me the Secrets. Today's story is The Secret of Victory. The Bible verse is 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13. Be alert, continue strong in the faith, have courage and be strong. The trip was every bit as bad as Landon feared it would be. His cousin was a troublemaker. Every time Landon was with him, he got into trouble. He has a way of making me do bad things, he explained to Josh before the trip. Like last year, he sneaked into an X-rated movie theater. I didn't want to go, but I knew if I didn't, I'd feel like a geek. So I went. Sounds like he's a bad influence on you, Josh replied. Sometimes it feels like he's more than a bad influence. It feels like he has control of me. Josh went into his study and returned with the Book of Secrets. He removed the key from around his neck and gave it and the book to Landon. When temptation comes, get off by yourself and read the story entitled The Song of the King. It will give you strength. The temptation came sooner than Landon expected. Even as his parents were greeting each other in the front yard, his cousin leaned over and whispered, "We're gonna party tonight." Later, when the two were alone, he told Landon, "After the folks are in bed, we'll sneak out. I know a girl whose folks are out of town. Everybody will be there." Landon tried to think of an excuse, but he couldn't. All evening, he dreaded the encounter. He didn't know what to do. Then he remembered the Book of Secrets. He told everyone good night, nodded at his cousin's wink, and went into the guest room. "Tell me what to do, Lord," he prayed, as he sat on the bed and unlocked the book. He found the chapter and started to read. The Song of the King. The three knights sat at the table and listened as the prince spoke. "My father, the king, has pledged the hand of my sister to the first of you who can prove himself worthy." The prince paused to let the men take in the news. He looked at their faces, each weathered from miles and scarred from battles. The kingdom knew no stronger warriors than these three, and these three soldiers knew of no fairer maiden than the daughter of the king. Each knight had asked the king for her hand. The king had promised only an opportunity, a test to see which was worthy of his daughter, and now the time for the test had arrived. "Your test is a journey," the prince explained, "a journey to the king's castle by the way of Hemlock." "The forest?" one knight quickly inquired. "The forest," answered the prince. There was silence as the knights pondered the words. Each felt a stab of fear. They knew the danger of Hemlock, a dark and deadly place. Parts of it were so thick with trees that the sunlight never found the floor. It was the home of the Hope Knots, small, sly creatures with yellow eyes. Hope Knots were not strong, but they were clever, and they were many. Some people believed the Hope Knots were lost travelers changed by the darkness, but no one really knew for sure. "Will we travel alone?" Carlyle spoke, a strange question to come from the strongest of the three knights. His fierce sword was known throughout the kingdom. But even this steely soldier knew better than to travel hemlock unaccompanied. You may each select one companion. But the forest is dark. The trees make the sky black. How will we find the castle? This time it was Alon who spoke. He was not as strong as Carlisle, but much quicker. He was famous for his speed. Alon left trails of baffled enemies whose grasp he'd escaped by ducking into trees or scampering over walls. But swiftness is worthless if you have no direction. So Alon asked, "How can we find the way?" The prince nodded, reached into his sack, and pulled out an ivory flute. "There are only 2 of these," he explained. "This one and another in the possession of the king." He put the instrument to his lips and played a soft, sweet aria. Never had the knights heard such soothing music. My father's flute plays the same song. His song will guide you to the castle. How is that? Alon asked. 3 times a day, the king will play from the castle wall, when the sun rises, when the sun peaks, and when the sun sets. Listen for him. Follow his song, and you will find the castle. There is only one other flute like this one? Only one. And you and your father play the same music? Yes. It was Cassiodon inquiring. Cassiodon was known for his alertness. He saw what others missed. He knew the home of a traveler by the dirt on his boot. He knew the truth of a story by the eyes of the teller. He could tell the size of a marching army by the number of scattered birds in flight. Carlisle and Alon wondered why he asked about the flute. It wouldn't be very long before they found out. Consider the danger and choose your companion carefully, the prince cautioned, and so they did. The next morning, the 3 knights mounted their horses and entered Hemlock. Behind each rode the chosen companion. The knock at the door startled Landon. He looked up from the book to see his cousin in the doorway. "Everybody is going to bed," he whispered. "I'll be back in a few minutes." And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "Night, Landon. See you in the morning." Landon groaned. "These knights aren't the only travelers in a dangerous forest," he muttered to himself as he turned his attention back to the book. For the people in the king's castle, the days of waiting passed slowly. All knew of the test, and all wondered which knight would win the princess. Excuse me. 3 times a day, the king sent the music soaring into the trees of Hemlock, and 3 times a day, the people stopped their work to listen. After many days and countless songs, a watchman spotted 2 figures stumbling out of the forest into the clearing. No one could tell who they were. They were too far from the castle. The men had no horses, weapons, or armor. "Hurry!" commanded the king to his guards. "Bring them in. Give them medical treatment and food, but don't tell anyone who they are. Dress the knight as a prince, and we will see their faces tonight at the banquet." He then dismissed the crowds and told them to prepare for the feast. That evening, a festival spirit filled the banquet hall. At every table, the people tried to guess which knight had survived Hemlock Forest. Finally, the moment came to present the victor. At the king's signal, The people became quiet, and he began to play the flute. Once again, the ivory instrument sang. The people turned to see who would enter. Many thought it would be Carlyle, the strongest. Others felt it would be Alon, the swiftest. But it was neither. The knight who survived the journey was Cassiodon, the wisest. He strode quickly across the floor, following the sound of the flute one final time and bowing before the king. "Tell us of your journey," he was instructed. The people leaned forward to listen. "The Hope-Knots were treacherous," Cassiodon began. "They attacked, but we resisted. They took our horses, but we continued. What nearly destroyed us, though, was something far worse." "What was that?" asked the princess. "They imitated." "They imitated?" asked the king. "Yes, my king, they imitated. Each time the song of your flute would enter the forest, 100 flutes would begin to play. All around us, we heard music, songs from every direction. I do not know what became of Carlyle and Alon," he continued, "but I know strength and speed will not help one hear the right flute." The king asked the question that was on everyone's lips. "Then how did you hear my song?" "I chose the right companion," he answered as he motioned for his fellow traveler to enter. The people gasped. It was the prince. In his hand, he carried the flute. "I knew there was only one who could play the song as you do," Cassiodon explained, "so I asked him to travel with me. As we journeyed, he played. I learned your song so well that though 1,000 false flutes tried to hide your music, I could still hear you. I knew your song and followed it." As Landon closed the book, a note fell out. He picked it up. "Follow the song of the king, Landon. Love, Josh." "Yes, Josh, that's what I will do," Landon resolved aloud. Minutes later, his cousin's face peeked through the crack of the door. "Come on, Landon, let's get out of here." "I've decided not to go." "What? Come on, don't be a nerd. Let's go have some fun." "No, thanks." Landon's voice was steady. "I'm staying home." And then with a smile, he added, "I've got some music to listen to." Do you remember the picture from Victory that the artist painted? This is the picture. And we have a note from the artist. The note says, "The Christian life can be likened to walking up an incline. Jesus called it the narrow road. Along the way are many opportunities, temptations, to stop or at least to become distracted. Our potent enemy, Satan, has littered our path with every stupid, pleasurable, and deadly thing at his disposal. Too often we fall for the apple he offers. We think it's just kid stuff or exploring what's out there, but Eve found out that it's much better to avoid getting ensnared than to try to get out of the trap. Many of us, as adults, have learned this same hard lesson. But there's a secret here that might help. It's called discernment. If we could quickly recognize sin for what it is and not be fooled by the packaging, we could resist it every time. If you knew that the beautiful candy-coated apple was really poison, you wouldn't think of biting into it. I have discovered an encouraging truth. The lure of something gets weaker the longer I resist it. Sure, at first it seems almost overwhelming, as if there is no way to refuse it, but that perception is only an illusion. Temptation is going to come to you through an enticing picture in a magazine or through a friend. It will not look like poison, but it is. Everything inside you will scream, Go ahead and take a small bite. Don't. The secret to staying on the road is making the decision to resist long before the offer comes. Here are the Bible verses that go along with that. Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. 1 Peter 5, 8, and 9. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. James 4, 7. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. Ephesians 6, 11 through 13. Thank you for listening to our story today. See you next time. Bye.